Hello everyone, welcome to Crypto Basics Coach podcast. I'm Marco. I'm here to help people navigate this topic so as to benefit from the opportunity this new technology provides and not get distracted or put off from the nonsense there is out there about crypto. Anything and everything presented and discussed, whether here or in our sessions, is of an educational nature and should never be taken as financial advice. Always do your due diligence and consult professionals before making any final decisions. Afternoon, everyone. Hope you've been well. As promised, this is part 2 of a 2-part series that I created due to some requests about understanding the sort of things that you should be looking at, you should be across, you should eventually learn, things you should be considering with regards to, your investments and what's going on economically around the world. So I covered 4 or 5 topics in the previous episode. I'm going to cover a few more in this one. Okay, hope you're finding it informative and useful, and hopefully you're doing your homework and getting to understand some of these and basically just becoming a more savvy investor. So the first one I was going to start on today is liquidity and interest rates, and this is, as in a sense, is the ease in which obtaining money is available. And as you could appreciate, whether you're a business, you're a person, you're a fund manager, or even the government, if interest rates are high and borrowing costs are higher, what that does is it typically reduces liquidity because there's essentially less money available in the marketplace, okay? Because it's harder to get, because it's more costly. So typically the central banks will raise interest rates to essentially try and slow down what they believe to be a heating economy. Unfortunately, that can result in people losing their jobs and so forth, but that's what they do. Okay, and so liquidity and interest rates are around, well, is it hard to get money? Is it getting easier? Is it getting harder? And of course, when it's easier to get money, not only do businesses expand, businesses grow because people are borrowing money, but obviously consumer spending also goes up. And from an investment perspective, a lot of assets do well because there are more people purchasing the interest rates. The investments, if it's easier to borrow money and people are feeling a little wealthier. Okay, so look into liquidity and interest rates and the effect that has on an economy. Then you've got a term that you may hear once you start looking at this sort of information is what they call the M2 money supply. And it's essentially how much are governments and central banks printing. How much extra money is there available? So as a good example, after 2020, when everyone knows the events that happened there, what happened was because the economy had been shut down, it needed to be reboosted. There needed to be a no pun intended, an injection of funds. Basically, government started handing out checks and started to spend money, and of course that meant that you needed to have printed money. Okay, so the money supply essentially was injected and increased, and that got the economy up and going. And when you have a look at some charts around M2 money supply, it's no surprise that when there is an injection of capital, of money into the economy, is that certain assets do quite well, investment markets do well, because again, people have got more money to then go and use in their respective ways. Okay, so you can have a look at that, and there's some interesting things around the M2 money supply and the effect it has on certain assets at certain cycle times. Then you've also got the business cycle, okay, and that's essentially businesses either expanding or businesses contracting, okay, and the biggest market in the world is the States. A lot of people do look at the States in terms of, well, what are their indicators showing? Are they showing that businesses are retrenching people and they're shrinking and they're spending less money, or are they expanding, hiring more people, and are they growing? Okay, so understanding the business cycle and what that means as an indicator of how the economy is going, that then has an impact on how investments potentially will do. Again, that's worth getting a bit of an understanding and tracking that. And by the way, one of I'll touch on that. I'll touch on that in a second. With regards to economic data, which the business cycle is one of them. One of the best places that I suggest you can at least start and potentially continue watching is a website called Forex Factory. Okay, a lot of Forex traders will use this particular platform to get an idea of what announcements are coming out when, so they can time their trading. But in terms of getting a great overview globally because you can specify which country you want to track, which information you want to track. The information is also categorized, low impact, medium impact, high impact, and it basically tracks all these values that I'm about to talk about. But it's a great central place where instead of waiting for it to come on the Channel 9 News, you can be plugged in, and you also start to get an idea of how repetitive the cycle is every month as to when this information comes out. Okay, so you can start looking at things like CPI or PMI, which is to do with the business cycle, or GDP, or unemployment numbers. These are all, and there's a few more, but these are the main items, main data points that affect the financial markets. Okay, all the major fund managers are looking at these. Typical investors are looking at these predominantly to get an idea of, which direction is the market going in. Whether they're looking to get into particular assets, whether they're looking to dollar cost average, whatever the case might be. These are the sort of indicators that give you a little bit of a guide as to where the direction of the market is going. Okay, so that you can then make decisions on your investment portfolio as to whether, should you hold off before you buy? Should you dollar cost average in? Is it time to start selling a bit because you're starting to look at these figures and going, we're pretty much at the top of the cycle, etc., etc. So this is all information. Okay, but Forex Factory is a pretty good place to get that information. There's a couple of other websites out there. You won't go wrong starting with Forex Factory, and again, you can also apply filters. You might only want to track the country you're in for obvious reasons, because that's what affects you the most, but also perhaps the United States, or you can also track Japan, etc. So it depends on what your interest level is, and then you can also filter on which information you want to see coming through. So it's a nice concise way of being able to get an idea on a number of topics and a number of data points that can affect your portfolio. So I hope you've found that interesting. As I've said at the very start of this series, by no means is this an exhaustive list, but I just wanted to touch on some key highlighted areas of what's going on around the globe, how you can keep an eye on it so that perhaps you don't just get one piece of information and then you're left scratching your head wondering, well, yeah, but that sounds positive, but I can still see the market going down. So what's going on there? And what may have happened is that there might be other information you've missed that helps explain why you're seeing what you're seeing in the market. And needless to say, today is the 1st of March. Unfortunately, one of the things that I talked about last week in the last week's podcast was conflicts. And if you've just woken up, or if you are about to wake up and you check the news, you'll just see that there's been an escalation in one of the conflicts I touched on last week, which is Iran. Okay, so keep an eye on what that does to oil prices, keep an eye on what it does to the markets when they open up in about 24 hours over in the States, here in Asia. And that's going to be a real life example where you can look at how one incident around the world can affect a whole bunch of other areas around the world, especially in finance. For this week's homework, no doubt, look at these topics I've covered today. Get on to Forex Factory. Start having a look at some of these factors. The other good thing about Forex Factory is you can actually click on that announcement and you can open up a description field, and it explains to you a little bit about what that indicator is tracking. It explains a little bit about what it means. It's not just a one-liner bullet point. So there's a fair bit of education you can do in that area. Otherwise, I hope where you're from, everything is peaceful. Take it easy. Hope you got some value out of this. And I shall talk to you again shortly. You guys take care. Cheers. Bye-bye. If you found this information helpful and are interested in a more hand-holding approach while navigating this complex industry, please visit cryptobasicscoach.com, that's basics with an S, and book a session. The first 30-minute session is free, and we can get to know each other, talk about what your aims are, what you're looking to do, and how I might be able to possibly help. I've helped people get started, set up exchange accounts, wallets, DeFi platforms, and general knowledge. Look forward to speaking with you. Cheers.